I was at the in Somerset County when Flight 93 crashed. I was actually en route to my general area where they were going to evac any survivors from the accident, and when I was about halfway there, they've already declared there was no survivors.
Welcome to the Brittney Richardson podcast, where we talk about issues affecting us every day. And we hear from you, your stories, and how we may improve the world around us. So buckle your seatbelts as we have a no-holds-barred discussion about our world. Now, here's your host, Brittney Richardson.
You're actually my very first podcast, so you should feel very special. But I am doing a topic on stranger things and basically things that people encounter, especially notable people with a law enforcement background, people that have been professional truck drivers that see things that we just can't explain. And when I thought of the topic stranger things, I couldn't think of anybody better but you.
Well, I'm strange. I got you.
I figured you would like that. But for everybody that doesn't know you, because I know you pretty well, I figured we'd start by just having you tell everybody kind of what your background is and just who you are.
Well, my background, I have 13 years in the law enforcement and security area. And then I have about 16 years in the trucking industry. Pretty much went into the Army right after high school. Got out from there, went right into law enforcement, and went from law enforcement to trucking, and still working in the truck industry now.
That's awesome. I couldn't remember how many years it was. And you were actually active on the law enforcement side during 9/11, so you've responded to some very notable situations as well.
Yeah, I have. I was at the in Somerset County when Flight 93 crashed. I was actually en route down there to my general area where they were going to evac any survivors from the accident, and when I was about halfway there, they've already declared there was no survivors. From that point on, I worked with the FBI, Secret Service, State Police. We all worked together, doing various things. My main job and objective was working with the White House communication staff, making sure they were safe, communicating with them, communicating with the families, and pretty much mainly other than protecting the White House communication staff, it was protecting the families as well, making sure they were left alone. There was nobody bothering them or intervening them when they weren't ready to be interviewed and such.
I can't even imagine. I mean, it was 9/11 was a shock for everybody. I can't imagine being one of the first responders responding to one of the crash sites. Like, I've been on a lot of accident calls in the past, and, nothing can prepare you for what you're about to see and have to deal with on the law enforcement side on a disaster scene like that. That's just got to be tremendous.
No, you never wake up and think, oh, today's going to be one of those days. I mean, it's just, I had a Labrador. I was trying to train as a canine for the canine unit at the time, and I just come back from a run with him when, as I come to the door, the first plane already struck the tower. And when I seen the second plane strike, I thought it was actually a replay of the first one. I didn't realize it was actually a second plane hitting the other tower. And then from there, just it was quiet for a few minutes. And then from that point, my pager and my home phone, everything just started blowing up. And at that time, the president's plane was supposed to be heading to a local airport in my area. They were going to land him there and take him to a different location. And so that was my primary objective, was to help secure that location. And then it changed rather quickly when we discovered there was a flight heading for, going to be a crossing our area heading for the D.C. area. and everything had changed. So then the flight was brought down, and everything went from there.
Speaking of stranger things, I remember, I don't even know if I told you guys this. This is also Jordan's dad, Carl. And so he's family. I call him dad. We're very close and have done a lot of investigations before, but I don't know if I even told you this. And that's that like 2 days before 9/11, I think it was actually 2 full days before, I had this dream, and it was towards the later end of the night, kind of into the morning. And I had this dream that there were bombs exploding like all over the country, like just explosions going off. And it was some mass terror attack. And it was like this nationwide thing. And I remember that was kind of my first shock on 9/11, was that realizing I just had this dream that shook me up, and it was the weirdest dream, just out of nowhere. And 2 days later, I wake up to seeing the scene where they're, preparing to shut down the nation. I woke up about the time that the first tower, you could see the smoke coming off the building, and then that's when the second plane hit, and everything just, went to hell across the country. So
yeah,
it was just
it went to hell pretty quick, that's for sure. I remember my priority thing before I took off was getting kids out of school, because at this point in time, you just don't know what's going to happen. The whole country could turn into total chaos. You don't know how many more planes are going to come out of the sky. You don't know what's going to follow behind everything else. So the first thing was to get the kids home from school and make sure they were safe and secure, and then take off from there. And it was just I didn't come home for almost 6 months. Her and the kids would come down and visit me. We were just, there was no dedicated hours. We were just working until you pass out for a few hours, get back up, go right back to work again.
I remember that, and that was such a scary feeling that morning too. It was the not knowing, because once we realized that it was a terror attack, then we didn't know what was going to be the next target. It was just
right. Mm-hmm.
It was a very eerie feeling. Back to like the paranormal side of things, because I know we've done several investigations together. Of course, recently the experience we had in the back office in Jordan's game room. That still freaks me out. I've been going over that footage, and it's been crazy.
Yeah, the few investigations we've done have been very successful. We did the one down at the hotel down there in Arkansas, in Eureka Springs area, and that was just unbelievable footage we got from that one.
Especially that like smoke, or what looked like smoke going into the K2 meter. And the biggest thing to me was
my fingers into the K2 and responding. Actually responding to questions properly. And it was just absolutely amazing, because we never seen that there. And there was, we had almost 360 degrees of coverage. So there's no way to sit there and say, well, we had smokes up, or someone was smoking a cigarette, or you could see clearly around everything that there was nothing that we could sit there and fake what had happened,
Yeah, and I don't know if you get this, but I know when we do investigations together, I think our law enforcement side comes out, because we are setting up multiple angles, multiple cameras, to where there's, we can truly show that if something occurred, you see every angle. It's not a trick. And
right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but I have this almost ambivalent feeling on an investigation, because my law enforcement side's like, come on now. We're hearing things, we're seeing a door shut, we're experiencing things that you can't explain, and then yet at the same time, it's like it's right there in front of us. It's like, what is this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the law enforcement side kicks in, because we got to sit there and try to explain it. We got to sit there and try to figure out why this happened. We got to debunk it, because, to us, you have to get to the bottom of everything. Everything has a reason why it's happening. You got to figure out what it is that's doing it. Mm-hmm. So we really dig into, okay, is there a draft? Did the furnace kick on? Is there, Is it off kilter? Did you step on a board somewhere on the other side of the house that triggered your door to move? I mean, is that noise an animal on the wall or is it something outside? I mean, we sit there and debunk literally everything. And when we come to a point where we can't find any reason for it, then we have to, define it as paranormal. And even, I mean, you got evidence there at the house that we've never even shown anybody because we can't sit there and say that, this is absolutely paranormal, even though we feel it is, but we just, we just don't have enough coverage to guarantee that, it can't be debunked. You know what I mean?
Right. I keep telling Jordan we need to get DVR cam. We really should have all the DVR cameras going 24/7 inside this apartment because it's like it'll be quiet for a while and then you hear little noises and things and you blow it off and you're like, well, this could be that. And then all of a sudden something like a door slams or a cabinet door opens and it's like, oh my God, we did not catch it on video. Like none of us were in the room. Either somebody's snuck in and broke in this place or, it's like unexplainable.
Oh yeah. I mean, even down here, I mean, we have an evil spirit that's part of our property. Almost about the whole mile of land we have here between our property and the property at the end of the road. It pretty much runs up and down this property line, and it personally don't like me. If it's because of the pasture side of me or what, it doesn't care for. But it seems like when I'm around, when it really wants to act up, and this thing's literally been on the roof, knocking on the roof. It's underneath the house, knocking on the house, and there's no explanation for it. And the bad part is I know it's demonic. So by myself, I really want to go out and investigate it and get into a situation I can't get myself back out of,
Right.
That's the thing. I mean, you can't, a cat, anything outside, they're cats. Cats can't knock,
Right.
I mean,
right.
There's no, especially the sound of knocks. I mean, everybody's heard it and it shook the whole house. And I mean, literally, a clear knock. I mean, not anything like, okay, a tree bumped against the house. I mean, literally like boom, 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 just making sure it had our attention, and it would, you have to go through and bless the property and, do a bunch of different things and it goes away for a little bit, but then it seems like it comes back just as mad as it was when it left the first time.
That would freak me out because that sounds like skinwalker crap. Down in the Southwest, you hear stories like that, like things are on the roof, things are knocking under the floor, and then all of a sudden somebody spots something out the window that's staring back at them that they can't explain. Like that's
that had happened down in Louisiana. We had I think it was a human spirit, but it was a mean human spirit. And this thing did not like me at all again. And this is before I even got pasture. In fact, I was still in law enforcement. I was working as a head of security for a casino down at a hotel, and doing training and stuff also. And I mean, this thing would knock around. Would literally go around the house, just knocking on every wall within seconds. And I went to look out the window one day, and it actually faced me at the window of the door. And literally almost paralyzed me for 30, 40 seconds. I couldn't do anything because of the fear factor of, there's something there that's not there.
So did you physically see it or you just sensed it, like just the fear aspect?
I knew something was there, but I mean, it literally showed itself on the other side of the window. Like my reflection was it. I was seeing what should have been my reflection was it looking back at me. And very, very demonic looking, very, it was an old man, but just very evil, and just, I mean, your body has its own sense of protection, and all that protection kicked in and just basically froze you up solid to where you couldn't move, couldn't talk, nothing, because you were just so stunned by what just appeared in front of your face,
Well, I've noticed that too, as far as just sensing something's off. I don't know if you experienced this in law enforcement, but when I used to run calls, and I would hear this all the time from the other officers, the other deputies, that they would just have a funny feeling, like a really sick feeling, not to turn right or not to go around the building this side. And they would have some noticeable story every time on how that saved their butt because the guy was waiting with the gun, and
right.
I just wonder if there's something that we're picking up even supernaturally that people can sense, that just maybe it's I don't know if it's the EMF or what it is, but
I don't know, because I was even raised the kids to always go with your gut feeling. I mean, that my gut feeling has saved my life I don't know how many times, and you have to. I mean, if something don't feel right, don't seem right, something's not right, and it's our design of our bodies. I mean, the human body is amazing, and it can, it picks up and senses something that's not right, or it heals itself, or it lets you know when something's not right, and it's just absolutely unbelievable. And unfortunately, when it comes to the paranormal, when you're doing an investigation in a house with people and stuff, one of the biggest things you have to look into is any health issues they're not aware of. Because with our body, we can, if something's not right, like if you're with the EMF spikes and stuff, that can cause paranormal, or not paranormal, it can cause that you're paranoid, schizophrenic type behavior in some people that are highly sensitive to it, and they're thinking something's there and they're seeing things there, but it's their mind or it's something with their health that's causing them to see this. But because they believe in it so much, they get other people around them also believing it. So now every little noise, every little crack, everybody else like, oh my God, what was that? Oh, I see what you were talking about. And when you go in there, you really have to go in with a clear mind and clear conscience that, there's nothing here, that this could be a health issue. And a lot of times, a lot of people, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of paranormal activity out there. There's spirits and everything else. But most of the time, it is just a health-related issue that somebody's having, that once they get that health issue taken care of, they no longer have the paranormal feelings that their bodies are sensing. You know what I mean?
Right. I remember there was even that one episode of Ghost Adventures that we had watched where I don't think they ever fully accused the woman of just having psychological issues, but it seemed like once they set their cameras up, that you noticed her hand move over a certain area of her body, and then scratches would show up, and it almost seemed like, this is a woman that had some psychological issues versus something actually paranormal.
And it wasn't necessarily anything she was doing on purpose. I mean, it could just be the fact that, she was, because she's had issues since she was a child. So it's not saying it's something either mentally or something that was attached to her since she was a child that's been carrying with her throughout the years. And I don't think they ever actually came up with a conclusion of anything of what exactly it was. But yeah, I do know what episode you're talking about. And it was, I said right off the bat that there's nothing to do with anybody else but that lady. Because nobody else was really picking up on it at first. So it was over time that they started, okay, yeah, maybe it's just this happening. But it was basically happening when she was around.
Right, which I think is what you said about going in with a clear mind, and just like you would on an investigation as an officer, if you're got a report of suspicious activity or a report of something occurring, you go in considering all possibilities, but you're there to gather evidence and try to get to the bottom of what actually occurred to put into your report. And I think that just stresses more the need for having equipment and cameras and multiple views, and going in there to say, hey, if this is something, psychological, if this is something that these people are imagining that really isn't occurring, we're going to we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to we're going to have evidence one way or the other.
Right. This is why I also like to I like to go in with somebody in the team having, interviewing the family, knowing what's going on, but the rest of the team not knowing what's going on. This way we can go in and not be influenced by what somebody else is experiencing. We're going in, this is normal house. We're just doing normal investigation to see what's going on here. This way, if we do get things that they have experienced, then we can back their experience up. And we can, have documentation of what they are experiencing. But if we go in there 2 or 3 times and we're not sensing anything and we don't come up with nothing, then that's when we can really sit there and say, okay, well, we all sit down and say, okay, well, this is what they were experiencing and this is what we got. And it's not collaborating with each other. Okay, so what's the EMF readings in the house where she's sensing these things going on? Where is, what's her health conditions like? So we can rule out the paranormal activity and relate it to there could be a health issue somewhere along the line.
Right. Where do you think the balance lies when we're going in with an open mind? We're trying to pretty much not know something in advance, right? So that we can, truly experience what we experience. But at the same time, in law enforcement, you want as many reports as you can. There was a report, RP 1, 2, and 3 reported these things, so you want to gather some information ahead of time. But at the same time, you almost don't with this because then it's like you don't want to contaminate our perceptions of what's going on either.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that's why you want, you want to have the family interviewed and everything that they're saying documented in that of what they're experiencing. So somebody on the team does have that information, but I do think though that going in without any influence, because a lot of times if you hear something, you're not trying to be influenced by it, the body's still going to. The first noise you hear, the first, what you think might be a whisper or something you hear, you're automatically going to say, oh, well, that's what they're hearing. And you may not pay as much attention to what else is going on around you because your brain's already influenced to what exactly is going on.
True.
And unfortunately, with the human body, you can easily be influenced by different things. So I think it's good to have, 1 or 2 people on the team that do have knowledge of what's going on. But the main investigator of the team, just to be kind of like, going in there with an absolute clear mind and not influenced in any way. This way, when we do come across evidence, we're backing up what the family's experiencing. And we can truly say, okay, yeah, this is what was going on. But either A, this is what we discovered, or B, we have no explanation for this, but this is evidence we got to back you up. And being we're not influenced by it, I think it keeps everything, as far as the investigation is, a lot more pure. Because this is not a criminal investigation we're going on, where we got to have all the information and details to investigate. This is a clean book we're walking into, as far as we're seeing it as, to be able to verify what the people are experiencing and whether the house has any type of paranormal activities or not.
True.
And, we're in a police investigation. You want all the information you can get to start putting your case together for court to be able to prosecute somebody for the crime they had committed. So you got to have all that information ahead of time. You got to have a place to start. To where with us, we know we're going in there because we're paranormal investigators. So we're going in there knowing there should be some type of paranormal activity, but I see too many times where paranormal investigators are influenced by, they hear all the stories and they go and they see all the hot spots and, then as soon as they go in that room, oh my God, well, this is exactly what they're talking about. And, we heard it too, but we have nothing else to back it up. And, well, would they have heard that and thought the same way if they didn't know ahead of time about it?
That's true. I like the idea on having 1 or 2 members of the team that are aware of, the specifics, but yet, most of the crew have no clue. That way, the evidence that they're capturing, we know is not influenced at all. But speaking of influence, what was the first thing that got you interested in the paranormal? Like from a young age, or is this something you've always had an interest in, or did you experience something?
Well, I mean, at a young age, I was always afraid to go up my attic because I always thought there was something up there that shouldn't be up there. And, and then once my attic had caught fire when I was a kid, kind of like whatever was up there wasn't there no more, never bothered me. But my first paranormal experience was actually at the time my fiance, now my wife, her parents' house. We were arguing and everything, and when I come downstairs to get something to drink, and when I came around the corner, I seen a white figure crossing. Their living room was not very big, but crossing the living room like there was somebody literally there walking. And at that time, they had a big 4 model TV, and as it went, and people who are younger don't understand 4 model TV. They were huge.
Right.
they were wide, they were deep, and they were high. So it wasn't like walking into a flat screen. But as this thing came across the room, as it hit the TV, it was disappearing.
Oh, wow.
And even the top part of it that was not hitting the TV, just hitting air, was actually disappearing. Like there was a wall to line that TV it was going right into. Mm-hmm. And it just absolutely fascinated me that, it scared the living bejeebers out of me, I can tell you that. I mean, I come up pretty much petrified, and your body's reacting in a very, secured mode. What's going on? What did I see? What was that? Mm-hmm. And I learned over time because she had 2 family spirits that's been around since she can remember, since her dad can remember, and these spirits would mimic sounds and noises and voices, and they would get her and all go to the store. Me and her dad would be there, and we'd hear the car pull in, hear him come in the house and say hello, or say nothing sometimes. And we get up to go up and help with the groceries and stuff. There's nobody there yet. They're just now coming down the alleyway.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, I had a motorcycle that had a very distinct sound to it. And it actually got to the point where, she would hear me coming in from work and think I was pulling in the driveway to come visit her. And it wasn't me. I was like 2 minutes later when I was pulling in, and just to be able to mimic a sound like that is just unbelievable to me. And we experienced a lot of poltergeist activity from that point on, from different houses we moved to and different things. We had one that we actually ended up moving out in the middle of the night because it got so bad. We could not stay there. And so I think it was just things throughout time as got me more and more interested. And as I got older, the more things I seen I couldn't explain. And I love history, and when you have documentation that goes back thousands of years, as far as between markings on walls and things written down and stuff like that go back a long period of time in history of aliens and Bigfoot and paranormal activities as far as spirits and stuff go. This is things you really can't sit there and say doesn't exist when it's been brought to the attention of people for hundreds of thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, and I also believe that the saying, people who don't learn from the past, will repeat in the future, and the past always repeats itself. History always repeats itself. And I think, some of that, learning the history and stuff from people who have passed on that are still in the spirit world you can learn from, I think could also benefit later on down the line too.
Mm-hmm. I definitely do, because if what we call paranormal activity, if it has to do with somebody passing on, which it's, according to the evidence, it appears that way. Are people getting trapped here? Are people, what is this? And to to better understand the why behind all of it and kind of what's on the other side. And what fascinates me the most, I think, is quantum physics, quantum theory and all of these things is, before that time, science was really oblivious to a lot of these things. And now what we read in a lot of the quantum physics books seem to be describing, things that we're observing as far as paranormal activity goes. It's actually possible to manipulate matter, without physically touching it and so forth. So it's
right. Mm-hmm.
It just really fascinates me. I think the first time I really remember being interested in the paranormal, like really interested, was I remember my parents typically didn't talk about paranormal stuff a whole lot. I think they didn't want to scare us, but I remember Dad saying one time, and he let slip that he was on patrol as an officer, and he was at an old resort, and I think they had an alarm go off, I think is what it was, but it was by this building. It was a pool, indoor pool, and he had went and checked the perimeter of this building, and he heard footsteps behind him. All the doors were secure on the building, so there was no evidence anybody broke in, no reason for this alarm to go off. It wasn't windy. And he heard footsteps, turned around, and nobody was there. And found out that a kid had drowned. I don't remember how old he was, like 8, 10 years old, but he had drowned in there just years before. And several other officers had reported, hearing things or seeing things over there when they approached that building that caused them to investigate further, and there's nothing there. So it always intrigued me that, here are trained officers that think they're responding to something physical, it's that notable, whatever's happening, and, yet it's not there. It's like, what is this?
Right, because, people who have not been in law enforcement don't understand the training we go through, and even military-wise, as far as, mental and physical training and stuff. And, you're trained a different way to notice different things, to pick up on different things, and also to, blow different things off, because, there's nothing there to back it up. So when, you have a police officer, especially, that's on a call or something and see something like that happening, you really have to take their word into consideration that what they're seeing and hearing is exactly what they're seeing and hearing. There's several stories here in the state of Arkansas where, and not too far from actually where we live at, that the police officers come across different things and different sightings and stuff, paranormal activity. And it's just, to hear their stories is absolutely amazing, because, these are police officers. They're, they're, I'm not saying all police officers are the same, but, these are guys that are highly trained. They take evidence and everything in the hand, and they pay attention to detail. But when they see things happen right in front of their face that they can't explain, you really have to take their testimony in that to heart, that, they did see and hear something that, can't be explained by normal, everyday behavior of things. But as far as the spirit world goes, as we're raised as kids and stuff, we're always told that anybody would take their own lives on that would not be, would go to hell and everything. They would not be able to go to heaven or anything else like that, be stuck in purgatory and such. But there's actually been some investigations that I have watched that, people are speaking with spirits that have crossed over and are free. They're not stuck in that area. They're not stuck to one certain area. But they took their own lives, and yet they're still able to, come and go as they please and not be stuck in any certain area. And it's also the theory of heaven and hell and everything. There's been, some spirits are very, they can be very vocal and communicate, and once they have the experience to be able to do it, I think it's going to be it's a learning process for them. That's also, everything has to be right conditions. it's like explosive devices that it could be triggered off by electronic or electrical static and stuff like that. The conditions have to be right for this to happen. Mm-hmm. You don't just drive by and hit on your cell phone and be able to blow up something that's down the road. I mean, a lot of times conditions have to be perfect to be able to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same way for the spirit world. It has to be good conditions for them to be able to communicate with you. But, I think as far as the theories of heaven and hell goes, I think the spirits are kind of restricted on what they actually are allowed to communicate and not. Mm-hmm. But, when they've been asked several times, what's heaven like? You would hear, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's great. Mm-hmm. But you do come across spirits that, are you stuck here? Yes, they are stuck there. And after further investigation, they're stuck there because either they don't feel that they're done doing what they need to do. They need to be there for somebody else, or, they don't want to face what's on the other side. Mm-hmm. They're too scared because, they may have been not the best people in the world. Or even if they were, because of the teachings of the church and stuff, they may not feel like they were good enough to move on.
Right.
And they're scared to go into that light that somebody had described as being there to be able to move on. But you really don't find a lot that are actually stuck in a purgatory phase that can't go anywhere.
So I wonder if to some extent people, even on the other side, spiritually, people make their own hell, so to speak. Some may be legitimately stuck. The reason what sparks my curiosity with this is I was studying hypnosis and did some videos about it because, it's a recognized, it's recognized by psychology. It's just the way the mind works. And there were several hypnotists. One guy was named Richard Martini, but he did not believe in anything paranormal. He did not believe in past life regression or any of these things. And yet he started to have clients that began to describe experiencing pieces of a past life while under hypnosis. And he decided to put it to the test by, testing facts, things that they could not know that maybe later we could research and, find out. Long story short, he became a believer, him and several other notable hypnotists, because there was too much evidence, to debunk. And part of the things that people are saying, describing past life, experiencing past lives, have been, because now he actually walks people through it. He's an actual believer. And some of them describe, being in a place what we would call hell. It's a place that's hot, it smells, and it's scary. And he noticed that whenever he asked them the question, why did you come here? Then all of a sudden the scene would change and they would go into the light. And his whole point in that, and he's done it with several people, is that people tend to move on the other side, at least from what they're describing through past lives and coming back, is that basically what they put their intent on, what they visualize, that is where they move. That is how they move. So I almost wonder if some people are either afraid to cross over through the light, or maybe they think they're stuck and they don't realize that they can actually cross over back and forth.
Right, and I agree with that. That's kind of what I was saying about it. Is, because with, especially people who attend church and everything, a lot of churches, if you weren't perfect, if you didn't follow the 7 commandments and you weren't perfect, you weren't going to heaven. And, so when they pass on, they have this fear that, well, was I perfect? Well, am I able to go over there? What if I do go and I can't come back and be with my family, or I can't do this or I can't do that? And I think it's a legitimate fear for them. And, and they refuse to go into the light. And it takes a while to be able to persuade them that, hey, look, you got family members that are waiting for you. Go to the light. You have no purpose of being here anymore. And, it's, I would imagine your fear factor is the same as what it is now when you pass on. Now, as far as your spirit and your soul when that goes, I mean, I've heard of stories to where, people have passed away on operating table or something, and, they were literally brought up out of their body. They could see everything around them, and be escorted up by angels or whatever. There's several stories on YouTube and stuff like that, and documentation on the web that you can read different people's stories of, being able to see this, or even in dreams, being brought up by the angels and that, to be able to, see heaven and view heaven and stuff. And some of these people were really detailed, and a lot of people from different parts of the world, their stories are so similar that you have to really sit there and say, wow, I mean, these are people who don't know each other by any means whatsoever, and yet their stories are so similar, but their ages are so different, or their nationalities are so different, and it's just absolutely amazing.
That's one thing that Richard had even said, because he started out, before becoming a hypnotist, he was a documentary filmmaker, and he would travel, all over the world, and he'd hear these stories, and there seemed to be a common thread between the cultures and what they're describing, in the afterlife, which makes you really wonder, this is something that we can document in the history books, going back to the first books written on topics about the afterlife. There's seems to be a common thread here.
Hieroglyphics in that from the Aztec, the Maya, the Incas, just other areas in Israel and in Africa and stuff like that, where you can find areas that have hieroglyphics that written down, Egypt and everything. They almost all have something related to the spiritual world in them. Whether it's animals that we believe don't exist, and we think don't exist. They have, even back then, they have hieroglyphics of animals that pretty much describe the same thing of what, werewolves and Bigfoot and, different things like that. And, still today, people are still debating whether these things actually exist or not. Now, how can you go thousands of years with things being documented and inscribed in walls and written on scripts and documented somehow? But yet, even today, we're sitting here saying, well, there's no way they can't exist. Chupacabras don't exist. Well, they don't exist, and they explain some of the things that people have come across that, that you don't match anything that's here today, but matches what was been documented for thousands of years as far as what a chupacabra looks like,
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, especially, you have all this history, you have thousands of people throughout history, millions, billions of people that have described this, and now you have the amount of training. Like, I don't think the average person understands, like, the amount of training that you have to go through, especially these days in law enforcement, because just the psych test alone, and we're talking, this is the initial interview phase, is over, mine was like 582 questions, and they come at you from every angle to trip you up and analyze your psychological profile. You go through lie detector tests, oral board interviews, and extensive background checks. It's incredible. Your medical history, like, they're digging into every area of your life and your family's life. And to have people that are, and then you have police academy and the amount of training and, how you hone in that skill as an observer. And then you have
the
these
physical
people,
and mental training and everything involved is absolutely ridiculous,
Exactly.
And you can't be weak-minded, and they do, I mean, I tested for the FBI, 20-some years ago, and I mean, the testing and questioning that involved in that was just, absolutely crazy, it just really was. It's just, one of the reasons I didn't get in at that time, because I was 3% body fat over the requirement, but just the testing, the psychological evaluation you got to go through and everything is just, is not what a lot of common people can go through. Is why, law enforcement, especially, even firefighters and paramedics, and you have to be, that's something that, you have to be that breed for. It has to be in your blood, or you're not going to be able to do it,
Sure.
And even drug driving, a lot of sense, it has to be in your blood, or you can't do it. Most people can't sit in a 70 cubic foot box and spend their lives in it, eating and drinking out of that, driving, 600 miles a day. And, it just, most people can't live that life,
Yeah, very true. Very true. And then you have people like I remember one time, I remember this was a different department, and it's not like things like this didn't happen all the time, right? It was hit and miss, but you had those calls that you just couldn't explain. And I remember one time that we had found an open door. I actually found the door, called for backup because that was our protocol, right? And, we set up a perimeter on the building. We had reason to believe somebody may be inside. I heard noises, and so we got the building surrounded, entered the building, and we go through this auditorium part. One was like an auditorium part of this building, and then the other half was like offices and hallways. And I remember I turned to the left, went down this hallway because we came in like at the end of the hall, and shut the door behind us quietly because, we're trying to be quiet while we go through there. And within maybe 5 feet away from that door, the door opens and slams shut behind us, and we hear footsteps. And that was the door running into the auditorium. So what do? The officers immediately turn around. We took chase on this, what we thought was a subject, going through this auditorium. And as soon as we open the door, and there's nowhere to hide. We're talking, this is like the size of a basketball, auditorium. This thing's huge. It's just open.
Right.
And, there wasn't even seating in there. And as soon as we whipped around and went in that door, nobody was there. And there was no place for them to go. So things like that, we just could not explain. And, we just had to pretty well say, oh, well, we must have been hearing things or whatever. But all of us knew that something had happened that we can't talk about with the chief,
At the end, too, as a paranormal investigator, you got to be able to separate, also between, an intelligent haunting and a pre-recorded haunting, I do believe that, our past can be recorded in wood and stone and stuff like that. And, sometimes they're playing just like a record, and it's what they did 100 years ago, they're still doing today. So they don't know that anybody else is around. They don't know the walls have changed. They don't know that, the building they might have been in 100 years ago is not even there no more, But they're just recreating every day. They're living that same pattern every day. And, we're picking up on it. And then you have your intelligent haunts that are like what we've had, where they are able to communicate with you, and they're able to do things. If they're able to do things that on demand by asking them, hey, can you do this for me? And they do it, And can you move that? Can you do this? Can you do that? And, it is absolutely amazing that, a spirit world can do this with the energy around,
Oh, yeah.
And people seem to forget. I mean, our bodies are water and electricity is what makes our bodies up. And it's the way we're designed. So it's not something that you sit there and say, well, afterward you don't have that no more. That they have to have energy. We have to have energy now to be able to do the things we do to go through life. And they have to have energy to be able to get enough energy up to make a noise or move something and such. So if you really think about how the human body is designed and what, we use today, it makes sense that an intelligent spirit should need some of the things also to be able to do what they do in their own world,
Absolutely. I mean, I look at, I used to read a lot about Nikola Tesla, and I was fascinated. The guy was brilliant, and he talked about radiant energy, but ended up leading into like topics on zero point energy, things like that. But think about how much energy is in the atmosphere alone. Just when you see a thunderstorm blow up, is a trained storm spotter in the spring. You see these massive cumulus clouds, these supercells, and the amount of electricity that is in those storms, is phenomenal. And that storm is simply gathering it from the atmosphere. It's like sitting here all the time. I mean, you've constantly got energy all around us and you can't see it. So yeah, it makes me wonder how all of that works and how spirits might be able to tap into that, or even use our phones like we've seen before, where batteries get drained and things like that, or people get drained. I've seen them like completely just go tired. But there does seem to be a difference between residual haunts and intelligent haunts, because sometimes you don't get a response, and then you have a time like when we were in the office a couple of weeks ago, and that face. I'm trying to think where we were on Snapchat filters, and that face showed up, and it's face detect feature. Like, we tested in the background on the photos on the walls, and nothing was triggering that face until we asked, hey, can you do that again? Can you appear right here, smile, and then all of a sudden this face filter pops up.
We played with that for a good half an hour, 45 minutes, and had nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. And then once we started, verbally asking, hey, can you do this? Can you show yourself here? I mean, it would come on almost upon request. And, unfortunately, again, we were playing with a phone. We weren't videotaping everything. That kind of what started everything up as far as grabbing the cameras and stuff goes. But, it was just, it was good evidence, but again, we really had nothing to back it up neither, other than the pictures itself.
I mean, I don't remember if Jordan caught the shadow on his or not, but we had three cameras in that direction.
You caught the shadow. I caught it moving along the floor, heading over towards you, the light anomaly. But you and Jordan actually caught the shadow yourselves with the strobe lights going.
I forgot, because you had it aimed lower, and then you saw that light that passed by my leg or something.
Right. Yeah. So you guys had the anomaly, the shadow anomaly on your cameras, and that was a theory we had as far as the strobe light goes. That, because I believe that the spirit world move on thought. They don't move like we do. That they can pretty much move in microseconds compared to our movements. You know what I mean? And I think with the strobe light, because it helps show things differently, because I know we discussed this before of a clip that Jordan got from up at the hotel there in Eureka Springs. What is the name of that hotel?
Is it Crescent?
Yeah, the
Crescent Hotel.
Crescent Hotel. He was, you guys were in the lobby, and he heard something goes through the camera, and there was nothing there. He thought he seen something. And the first time I watched it, I seen what he seen, but we went back across that thing 20, 30 times, and we can't pick it up. But I have noticed there's a company out of Florida that is able to take video and slow it down beyond imagination, how much they can slow this down. And they're actually able to pull a lot more evidence out, being able to slow things down to these milliseconds. And I believe, once we get that capability more out for the public to have access to, especially paranormal investigators, I do believe we're going to start talking about a lot more evidence that can't be discriminated against,
Yeah, it would be absolutely fascinating because, using the strobe light, you're still able to see. We always think we need to shut off all the lights, right? And to go completely dark to get activity. And here we are using a strobe light, slowing the film down, and things are being captured. So it makes me wonder, even if somebody were to set up very bright lights, and run things in slow motion, even for a few minutes, especially if we get intelligent responses, maybe to lighting the K2 up or something like that. Maybe set up lights and do kind of like we did in the back room where we say, hey, you want to communicate, can you please step in front of the light? We're going to try to better communicate with you. Nothing here is going to hurt you. And see if we capture something, or even continue to do. I don't know. It makes me wonder, because the strobe light works very well.
Spirits are around all the time. It don't have to be nighttime or daytime that they're around. I believe they're around all the time. I just believe with our night vision and stuff like that, we're able to capture them a little bit better at nighttime. But I even believe during the daytime investigation, I think, can still be progressive, especially if we can slow it down. And there's a gentleman, I can't think of his name offhand, I can't think of the name of the show. It's on Amazon Prime. He's up in Michigan. And he's got like 6 different shows out he's done. He's actually had some people from TAPS that's come up and joined him on investigations. But he's the one that uses the company out of Florida that, he sends clips to them, and they can sit there and slow this down to, like I said, microseconds. And they picked up some amazing things that, by slowing it down, because, we've seen investigations where, they spotted a shadow at the corner of the building, and within a split second, it was at the opposite corner of the building. And nothing can move that fast from one corner of the building to another, So I believe that they can move at the blink of an eye. It's just a thought process for them that, I want to go there, and they're there. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of evidence that we're missing as paranormal investigators, because we can't slow everything down that much. Our equipment's just not capable of doing it. There's not programs available to the general public that can do this yet.
Right.
And I think, you can slow it down, more, you're going to pick up more. And I really think, our future investigations, even like smaller ones, like the bedroom and stuff that we've done, or the office and that, these are the smaller ones, I think, are the ones that we really need to experiment with and see, because unfortunately with a big investigation, as you know, we got, hours and hours and hours of video and audio to go through. If we sat there and slowed every one of them down, it would take a year to go through everything for one investigation, and just nobody, we all work. We don't have time to sit there and go through all that. But we don't do smaller investigations and
or just do like a segment, kind of like you do a K2 session or an EVP session. If, like I said, if we get in what seems to be an intelligent response, maybe that can also trigger the idea to go ahead and key up the either slow motion camera or, do the strobe light. I think the strobe light definitely needs to be on each investigation, at least to some extent, because
I'm going to be picking up one. I got one coming, hopefully, and it's got an adjustment on it. We can actually adjust the speed of the strobe, and that's something I think we need to play around with a lot more and see what we can get out of this. It's just a theory we had. We tested out, and it came out pretty decent.
Nice.
And I really think with a strobe light with adjustable speed on it, I think is really going to benefit us a lot. And
wouldn't that be something?
The laser grids on the wall and stuff, that I've seen, I've seen some benefits from them, but not enough that I sit there and say, okay, I want to go out and get grid, get the grid laser beams and stuff like that. But the strobe light, I really think that we're going to benefit a lot more by using that. And I can't wait to get it on with the night vision and the IR, not the IR, but the other camera I have, the full spectrum,
spectrum.
To get under the full spectrum and everything, and really see what we're able to capture. We may not be able to pick it up on the night vision or full spectrum, We might only be able to pick it up on just a regular camera, But these are what's going to make us better investigators and provide more documentation that can't be disputed later on down the line to prove that, there's intelligent spirits out there that does exist, and we are able to communicate with them and possibly learn from them for future investigations.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's absolutely crucial that we continue to experiment and or take a piece of an experiment another researcher has done and kind of build on that and try our own things. And I think if we continue to do that and document like we have been, I think we're going to capture a lot of evidence. But my camera is just about full. Like, I'm enjoying this conversation so much because there's so much to talk about.
We can pick it up another time. I mean,
Yeah, we definitely need to. That's 100%. So I have one last question for you, and I want to ask this to everybody that I interview. I think it's a nice way to end an interview or end a podcast, and that's, if you had a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom to give to the world, what would it be?
A piece of advice to give to the world. Communication. I think communication is key to everything. Success, relationships, just life itself. Communication, I think, is the best advice I give to everybody, is learn how to properly communicate with people. And I think life would be a lot better.
Take me to the streets so I can celebrate. Never knew a feeling better than today. Means the beginning of a brighter day. Letting in the feeling